It's not Scooby-Doo ending because I'm at the beginning, so it's the Scooby-Doo beginning. So in knitting, there's usually a beginning set of skills, right? You first learn how to knit, then you learn how to purl, then you maybe learn how to do a decrease, usually the knit two together, which is a right-leaning decrease, and then you learn your first increase. For a lot of people, that's the knit front and back. But the funny thing about the knit front and back is actually, you don't see it all that often in patterns. And the reason is because a knit front and back creates a very noticeable bar in the knitting, and it can be a nice decorative element, or it could just be something you don't want to notice. There are far more discrete increases, and the one that you see the most often is the make one. However, is the way most of us learn how to do the make one the best way to do it? Are there other options, other approaches to the make one? Yes, 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 there are. Today, I'm going to show you 3 options for doing a make one, and you can decide for yourself which one you like best. And at the end of the video, please make sure to let me know down in the comments below. So, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and let's figure out what's the good, the better, and the best make one. Before we get started, quick reminder that down in the description box, you will find timestamps to different parts of the video if you want to get to one particular technique quickly. But of course, I always hope you'll watch through the whole video at least one time, because you never know what you might discover. Also down in the description box, you will find a list of materials and resources that I used in today's video or I think are helpful for you. Some of these will have clearly marked affiliate links. If you click on one of these affiliate links and it will take you to a shopping website, if you make it a purchase, I might earn a small commission, and these help support my channel. Okay, on with learning about the make one. Yes. So I want to just jump in and demonstrate the traditional make one that we all kind of learn to knit. All right, so just gonna knit across. So I'm gonna come up 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want my make one to be 2 stitches in from the border. So that means here's these 2 stitches. I'm gonna do my make one between the 2nd and 3rd stitch from the border. So, whoops. Just dropped a stitch. I just did a video on common mistakes to knitting, which I just did one. If you want to check out the video, you can. Nice little plug there. First, we're going to do a make one left, and this is the easier of the 2 make ones to do, and it's the one that I do if a pattern only says make one, I just presume to do a make one left because I think it's easier to execute than a make one right. So to work a make one, you work in the running thread between 2 stitches. See that line of thread right there in between my needles? We're gonna pick up this running thread and work into it. So the way we're gonna work into it to make a make one left is I'm gonna remember the mnemonic. I'll be right back. I left through the front door. Okay, so I'm gonna bring my left needle to the front of the work, and then I'm gonna bring it underneath that strand of yarn, that running thread, and it now looks like I have a yarn over on my needle. If I were to just knit into it, I would get a hole in my work. Well, I don't want a hole, so what do? Well, I'm going to work into this running thread so that it twists and it closes any hole. I'm going to do a purposeful twisted stitch. So to do that, I have my yarn up on the needle. You'll notice the right leg of that yarn is here on the front of the needle. So I'm going to take my right needle and I'm going to work through the back leg, knit my stitch, and now I have a new stitch right there. The right leg is crossing over the left leg of that stitch I just created, which makes it left leaning. So I have a left leaning make one, okay? And now I'm just gonna knit across to the next spot where I want my next increase. Here I am in my spot that I'm going to do my right leaning increase. Here is that running thread that is right there for me to work into. So I want this to be a right-leaning increase. But like the first make one I did, in order to create a right-leaning increase, I actually have to create a twisted stitch so I don't create any holes. To do that for a right-leaning increase, again, I'm going to remember the mnemonic, be right back. So I'm going to bring my left needle behind the fabric, and I'm going to pick up that strand of yarn from behind. Now, if you look closely at that stitch that I've sort of created, again, it looks like a yarn over.
However, this time, if you notice, the right leg of the running thread is to the back of the needle. So to twist my stitch, I'm going to actually work this like it were a regular stitch. I'm going to bring my right needle to the left side of the stitch and work into it. And there I have my right leaning increase.
All right, so I've done my make ones. I've done a make one left and I've done a make one right. And let's take a closer look at them in the fabric. Frankly, these are pretty discrete increases. The only way you really can tell that they exist in the fabric is by looking for that twist. There it is. There's that little twisted stitch there. That's where I did my make one left. And that's because you can see that that yarn there that's twisted is leaning towards the left. And on this side, we have the make one right. So what's the problem with this version of the make one? Well, the big con of this version of the make one is that you are working in the running thread, right? But the thing is, I talk about these different parts of a stitch, the purl bump, the legs, the running thread. The thing is though, it's all one continuous undulation of yarn, which means that when I pick up that yarn, that running thread, to work a stitch in between two stitches that already exist, that means that I'm going to be pulling some of the yarn out of those stitches on either side of the increase. There's no way around that. That is just knitting physics. And what that means is the stitches around the make one can be a little bit smaller than the rest of the work. It's not necessarily that big of a deal, but there is that slight discrepancy. The stitches are always a little bit tighter around the make one. And that's going to matter more or less depending on a lot of factors, like the type of stitch pattern you're doing, the fabric, the yarn, the fiber. There's a lot of like different factors that go into whether it matters or not that you're tightening up those stitches around the make one. But the other thing about the make one is because you are just pulling up that running thread, sometimes it's a little bit tight trying to work into those stitches that we're creating. Now, in this case, with this yarn and the size of the stitches, the tension I was knitting with, it wasn't that difficult, but I've certainly been in situations where everything was tighter. I'm working on smaller needles, I'm working with smaller yarn, I'm working on a denser fabric, and trying to create that make one is far more difficult simply because there isn't as much sort of wiggle room with that running thread to try to create the make one. So let's look at variation number one of the make one, which involves doing a yarn over. Here's the basic truth about yarn overs. Yarn overs are not real stitches. I've been into debates about this. You count it as a stitch, but really what you're counting is the potential stitch it's going to allow you to create. But a yarn over itself is not an actual stitch. What the yarn over does is it takes that running thread and makes it longer between two stitches so that you have more space to work into. And with lace knitting, you want that because you want the hole to be nice and pronounced. So you want a longer bit of running thread to work into. But if you're doing lace knitting and you forget to do a yarn over, you can always cheat and lift the running thread, work into it, and still get that hole in your lace knitting. Aha. So that means that if you want to make a make one, where the size of the increase better matches the stitches around it, and you're not stealing yarn from stitches on either side to create a new column of stitches, you can make a yarn over on one row, and then when you get to that yarn over on the next row, you purposely twist the stitch to close it. Swatch time! Swatch time! Don't know why I just did that, but anyway. So to do my increase this time, instead of working into this running thread on the row below, I'm going to just go ahead and do a yarn over. So I'm going to bring my yarn to the front, then I knit the next stitch, and I've created a yarn over.
However, my increase is not complete. To finish this and not have a hole in my work, I'm going to have to knit the rest of this row, turn my work, and purl back to where that yarn over is.
Okay, coming up here to my next yarn over. Here it is on my needle. Okay, my right leg is to the front. I want to twist this stitch. If I just purl into this one regularly, I'll end up with a hole, okay? So this yarn over, I'm going to purl through the back. And that will give me a make one left. Over here on this side, there it is. There's the make one left right there. Very discreet, nicely sized stitch right there. The stitches match up very nicely.
Well, what about the make one right? Actually, over on this side, I have one here. There it is. There's the make one right. And next, I'll show you how I do this increase with a yarn over.
This side, I want to have a right leaning make one.
Now, for a left leaning make one, I just wrap the yarn counterclockwise. But for the right leaning make one, I'm going to do something a little different.
I'm going to use actually a clockwise yarn over this time, and it will make sense. I'm going to bring the yarn over the top of the needle and around into the back. Okay? I just wrapped my yarn clockwise around the needle.
And then I'm going to knit across. And what this is going to do is to set me up on the following row to twist that yarn over so I get a right leaning make one.
Here's that yarn over. See how it's sitting here on my needle with the right leg to the back? If I purl through the front leg for this make one right, that's going to twist my stitch. And that's why, by the way, I wrapped my yarn for the make one right clockwise, was that so when I came to it on this purl row, I could just purl into it like it's a normal stitch and twist it. Sort of two cons to this yarn over make one situation that I just demonstrated. The first is, it is a two-step process. So if you are going to substitute this make one for a make one in a pattern, you do have to keep in mind that to keep your increase row in the same place of the work as the pattern indicates, you have to work the yarn over one row before the increase is indicated in the pattern. For example, let's say this swatch was a pattern, okay? And it said row 4, knit 6, make 1 left, knit 2 before the last 6 stitches, make 1 right, knit 6, okay? If I wanted to substitute this yarn over make 1 for what was written in the pattern, on row 3, I would do the yarn over. So row 3, I would knit 6, yarn over, knit till the last 6 stitches of the work, yarn over, knit 6, and then on the next row, I would knit 6, and then I would work the yarn over as a twisted stitch, knit to my next yarn over, and twist the stitch. But here's a little secret between you and me. A lot of patterns, not all patterns, but a lot of patterns, if you do your increase 1 row above, it'll be fine. Most patterns, you'll be okay. There are exceptions, You gotta be able to look and make judgment about how to best approach it, but you can usually fudge one row and be fine. The other con of this version of a make one is you do have to understand how to twist stitches and how stitch mount affects twisted stitches. For a make one left, it's really straightforward. You just do a regular yarn over, and then when you come back to that yarn over, you work through the back leg so that you twist the stitch and you have a make one left. For a make one right, you do a yarn over so it's clockwise around the needle, and then when you come to that yarn over on the next row, you then work through the front leg like it's a normal stitch, and that will give you the make one right. So you have a couple of things that you need to keep in mind, and it's really helpful if you understand how twisted stitches work, and it's really, really helpful if you understand how Eastern versus Western stitches work. I have a video on Eastern versus Western mounted stitches if you want a lesson on that. If you're looking at that, you're going, Carrie, I don't know if I can remember all that. I don't know if I want to remember all that about how you twist stitches and everything. I got you. I got you. I got you. Basically, what I'm going to do for this make one variation is really casting on a stitch. It's just gonna be casting on one stitch, but structurally, it's the exact same thing as a make one. Let's take a look at it. Again, I'm going to knit my 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So here I am at my spot. Now I want to do a make one left. To do a make one left, so here's the right side of my yarn, and here's the left side, right? If I think about it over my hand, I need this length of yarn here to come around the front like this for a make one left, and then I put it on my needle.
Let's look at that again in slow motion. I need the right side of the strand to cross over the top of the left side. And so I turn my hand to the left to create that left twisting stitch. Let's slow this down even more so you can see what's happening. And here's a close-up, and you can see how the right side crosses over the left.
You have to think about it a little bit for the make one left.
Because doing this is actually the opposite of doing a backward loop cast on, which is what we'll do next for the make one right.
Here I am in my next spot to do my make one right. The make one right is actually easier to do because all you're gonna do is you take your yarn and you do a backward loop, and that causes a right leaning situation, a right leaning twisted stitch. And then I finish knitting.
Once again, let's look at that in slow motion. I take my yarn and I twist it to the right, and then the left side of the yarn is over top the right, and that creates the right leaning twisted stitch. And again, let's look at a close-up of what that twist looks like. You can see how the left side of the yarn is over the top of the right, and it slants to the right. Okay, so now I'm going to turn my work and get to the next row, and I'm going to work my stitches up to the first cast on stitch that I did. All right, I'm coming up here, and there is that right leaning cast on stitch that I did. So I'm going to just purl into that. Because I already twisted the yarn when I cast it on the stitch, I don't have to think about working through the front leg or the back leg or anything like that. I can just purl into the stitch.
Again, I'm coming up here towards the end to my make one left. There it is right there. There's that other make one left that I did, but I already twisted the stitch, so I just work into it like it's a normal stitch. I don't have to do anything fancy because I twisted the yarn when I cast it on. And let's take a look at the result. So right there, you can see my make one left. Look how nice and tidy that is. So tidy. All the stitches around it are nice and tidy. It's very even. There's like literally no issues. I didn't have to think about twisting the stitch. I didn't have to think about what direction to lift the running thread up. You know, I just cast it on a stitch, twisting it in the direction that I wanted it to lean. There is my make one right. This is the easiest make one right to make because you just do a backward loop cast on and boom, it's there. And boom. So what are the cons of the casted on make one? Well, like its cousin, the yarn over make one, you do need to cast on that stitch one row below where the pattern says to do an increase, okay? And in that way, your increase row will stay the same throughout the knitting. Your increases will be in the same spot. And I think that is helpful just for consistency and being able to read your knitting and understand how everything is working in it. But again, you might decide that fudging an increase row one later is not a big deal. You can make that choice. It is your knitting. You are the boss of your knitting. The other con of it, I think, is in the cast on make one. I think the make one left is a little trickier to do. The make one right is really straightforward. You're doing a backward loop cast on. It is like the most basic cast on you can do. But for the casted on make one left, you have to like really kind of think about twisting that stitch so that it leans towards the left, and it's just not usual motion that we do. So that is the drawback of the make one left using this sort of cast on method. There are the three variations of make one: your usual make one, a yarn over make one, and a cast on make one. I want to hear from you down in the comments below what you think would be your favorite method or what you want to try next if you haven't tried any of these yet, and why you're leaning one way or the other. For me, I think I tend to lean towards the cast on method, and I'm kind of surprised. I never thought about doing a cast on stitch in place of a make one until I started working the half hap fade shawl by Lavish Design. You can learn a little bit more about that pattern in my Angora video, which I will link up here and down below. But it called for a, casting on a stitch utilizing a backward loop. And I was like, oh, I kind of had heard about some of that on Twitter, but I've never actually thought about doing it. And it got me thinking more about it. And I was like, it is structurally the exact same as a make one and the yarn over thing, which I learned while going through the level 1 master hand knitting course. So, yeah, that blew my mind. I hope you enjoyed today's video and you got some great information out of it. If so, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your other yarn wrangling friends. Liking videos, sharing videos, commenting on videos are all great ways to help support my channel and let YouTube know that this is a space worth checking out. If you have not already, please make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Hitting subscribe will make sure you get notified whenever I upload a new video or start a live stream. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, weeknight, whenever you may be watching this. And as always, happy health and happy making. Bye. Oh God, I almost burped there at the end. Burp club almost happened. Count it in though, I held it in. We're just gonna go live. We're just doing it. I'm just gonna do it. No script, I'm just doing it. All right, so hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and let's almost had it. So hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and let's explore. I think this means I need coffee. Explore. And then when you come back to it on the next row, you then work through that. By the way, did not expect to enjoy the casted on method that much. I was all ready to say the yarn over was the best one, but I changed my mind during the video. I gotta wrap this up. I'm almost done. I just need 1 more minute and then I gotta eat lunch, okay? 1 more minute. All right, I gotta go because I gotta eat lunch. We're having a pool day. And, but if you would like to enjoy some more videos, I have to go, but you don't have to. There's gonna be a couple of video selections that come up. Click on one of those, you can watch another video by me. Or if you have a pool day planned, don't forget subscribe. You have one last chance. Picture in the corner, click on it. You can subscribe to my channel. Okay, gotta go.